Pat Lehman.
Pat Lehman.
For a change. Okay, it is my honor and a real pleasure to be able to introduce this mother-daughter dynamic duo who, Barbara and Julia Weinberg, who are going to explain to us the concept of mindful activism with self-care. And who would have ever guessed that those words would all become part of one phrase? But first of all, a word about Barbara. Barbara joined AAUW in San Mateo, California, back in the early 60s when society was in great upheaval. And she immediately became very involved. She was branch membership VP in a branch with 500 people. Wow. And she moved on to the California State Board as a representative of the Legislative Committee. And then in 1971, she became a member of AAUW National's Legislative Committee. And in 1974, she became its chair. Barbara's home is in Nevada, but she came to celebrate Julia's birthday in Seaside, Oregon in March and was scheduled to fly home March 31st. Well, you know what happened. And Barbara's still in Seaside, but I don't think either of them is unhappy about that. Moving on to Julia, the daughter part of the dynamic duo. Julia has a really amazing array of skills and experience. She earned her Bachelor of Science from OIT, and her degree was in electronic engineering technology. And later she moved on from that field to teaching, and then later became a therapist. And along the way, she earned 2 master's degrees and a doctorate. Julia is currently in private mental health practice in Seaside, Oregon. So thank you, campers. Sit back and enjoy. And welcome to Barbara and Julia Weinberg.
Hello, we're all here. So we're going to talk about the challenges to being a human being on these days of challenges and how to not add to your challenges. And this has been a really interesting experience working with my mom because we've always known we have really different ideas of, I'm calling self-care, she calls it different. So she's going to start and talk about what it's been like for her, and then I will talk to you about my reality. And part of the challenge that I need to be, I have a lot of respect for my mother, but if I try to live my life the way she lived hers, it adds to my angst. So I need to really be careful to honor myself. So this is my mom, and she's amazing. She's amazing. Now, she may not look it, but she's 85 years old, and I'm 59 years old, and I think that's important to say. And Izzy the dog, he helps me when I do therapy in the office. It's all virtual now, but he's just right between us because he's important in this office. So she's amazing. While she's been here, she does jazzercise or some form of that virtually. She does her book groups now virtually. She even learned how to do online banking. I mean, it's just been an experience. Anyway, here I want to share my amazing mother, Barbara, with you. Oh, I'll just say right now, so one of the things I often say to my clients is you need to learn to be comfortable with discomfort, despite the challenges. And it's not that you're accepting everything as it is, but you're not adding more to the discomfort. So, okay, next slide. Oh, wait. So one of the things that I really look at is that I'm not judging people from the outside, that I recognize that Gloria Steinem, Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, they also go through struggles. So this was a quote from Gloria Steinem, one of her struggles. And one of her struggles at the time was that anger was unfeminine. We still have some of that in ourselves, but less than it was in the past. So this talks about one of her struggles to be an activist, to speak up. So I think it's a very interesting quote. And Hillary Clinton, she says she also has her ups and downs, and I can just imagine what it was like for her the day after the last election. I knew what it was like for myself. So you know, she has ups and downs too. And then she was at a luncheon and she talked about that she appreciates and reaches out for love and support, which we all need to do, even though it's hard sometimes. And then Michelle Obama, interestingly, this is a quote from 2012, and you'll all have these handouts to read it more closely. But you know, she's saying she vents to her girlfriends, her mom. She reaches out to other friends, and she recognizes that's so important for her to keep doing the important work that she does. And on the next slide, there's a link, and what's been in the news is she's saying that she feels like she has a low-grade depression right now because of what's going on in the world. And I just really I don't like her to have a low-grade depression, but I like that I'm not the only one feeling these struggles, that all the things I've worked hard to help myself, you know, go day to day, we just need extra tools right now. And she's with me, sister. So yeah. And so next slide. And now we'll talk. So this was an activity that we could have done, but I just want to move on right now. But you know, just for right now, just if you just write in the chat or just think about, you know, what kind of feelings are coming up for you right now? Is there an anger, a sadness, a fear, maybe some shame? You know, when you think about what's going on in the world, and how can we use why do we have those emotions? And we have those to help us protect us, but we don't want them to be so strong that we go into a freeze state and we can't move forward. So so just to notice how that feels, and then later we'll talk about switching that up. And then one of the things, the next one that comes up for me when I think about my feelings is an outrage when I listen to the news sometimes, and what's being said just does not work for me. It doesn't go with what's my reality and what I find as the facts. I just feel an outrage. So it's important that I acknowledge that. And we'll talk more about what to do with that so it doesn't get us fixed. So just naming those feelings can be a good thing, but it's very hard to sit in those negative feelings. So it's important to notice how they can motivate us, that discomfort. So that's some of the being comfortable with discomfort, so we can use that to motivate us in a way we can. So here's Mom, the next slide.
I want to thank all of you for including me in this session. You've given me a chance to reminisce about my wonderful years with the National AAUW and to share them with you. It was a very busy time for women in those years with women in legislation, but at the same time there were many women that were highly educated, but their work was as a homemaker, not in the salaried labor force. And we knew we wanted something more than just being a homemaker. And so we were highly motivated to find something. And interestingly, especially for AAUW, the two places that most women were turning for substantive conversation, opportunity to be with a community of women that were aware of the outside world and wanted to be a part of it. So AAUW and League of Women Voters were the places to be in those years, which is why my San Mateo AAUW had 500 members. That wouldn't happen now. Many educated women are in the labor force. The primary item on the on the AAUW program was ERA, but there were also some I'll call them stereotypical women's issues: equal education opportunity, right to choice, Title IX regarding discrimination in education. But AAUW was way ahead of its time. It was also not just looking at women's issues, but looking at environmental pollution, looking at land use planning, looking at what might happen to our social security system. So we were a very broadly based legislative program, but clearly ERA was primary. And at that same time, we're talking 1971 to the now National Organization for Women was founded, Women's Political Caucus was founded, and those were the activist places for women to be. And interestingly, Kimberly Jensen, the very first part of this skills program, made a comment about the fact that you always need somebody that's kind of more aggressive than you are. And that was what the position that now fills. So they'd be more aggressive and they'd say something, and we'd come along a little bit more calmly, assertively, and say exactly the same thing. And suddenly we were right, and they were just those women out there. But historically, in August of 1920, you're all aware, this is the 100th anniversary of women receiving the vote. And also in 1923, Alice Paul introduced the Equal Rights Amendment, which just languished in the Congress, coming up, nobody paying attention to, till finally 1972, it was introduced in the House, and it passed, and it was introduced in the Senate, and it passed, and that meant that to be ratified, it went on to the states. You can see on the slide here, 38 states were needed to ratify. 73, we had 31, and then the opposition rallied. And I don't know if any of you were aware of, probably you were way too young, Phyllis Schlafly, who founded the Eagle Forum. And the Eagle Forum was totally anti-ERA and anti-abortion, totally anti-AAUW, obviously, those being some important issues to us. So 7 years that was given for ratification passed, then that was extended to 10 years, and still the ERA didn't get passed. And if you've been listening lately, it reappeared, and only 3 states were left needing to get up to the 38, Nevada, Illinois, and Virginia. And those 3 states, thankfully, did pass it. Then it passed in the House, and now it is sitting in the Senate waiting for the deadline of 10 years to be eliminated. Well-known ERA activists, Julia, I call my daughter Julie, showed a statement by Gloria Steinem, but you probably recognize Bella Abzug, Betty Friedan. Those were the significant activists, newspaper known women of the time. And just a little aside for myself, in 1977, the first Women's National Conference was held in Houston, Texas, and I was there representing AAUW, and one of my wonderful moments, I happened to get ready to go to the airport just at the same time as Gloria Steinem was heading to the airport, and she and I rode to the airport together, leaving the national conference and having wonderful conversations about the success of the conference.
Next slide, please.
Just a bit of other, when during that same period of the 70s, went through 4 presidents, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter. But kind of aside from that, the AAUW national headquarters is very near the Watergate Hotel, unless they've moved in these years. I don't think so. And the board and the legislative committee always met at the Watergate 8 times a year. And during that period, 72 to 74, was the Watergate scandal of great fame. And we were totally unaware until it became a very, very public issue. And lastly, I want to tell you, AAUW, even in the 70s, was looking way ahead at legislation that was probably going to be necessary. And I really remember that we were onto the whole issue of global business, multinational corporations, that they might have very different allegiances, even though they might have been formed and initially headquartered in the United States. And then that medical technology was moving forward so quickly, there was a feeling that maybe there was going to be some necessary legislation regarding what would be legal or illegal. So those were wonderful years for me. Just great in my memory, and thank you for letting me tell you about them.
At that time, when Mom was talking about I was in middle school, so I knew she was doing a lot of activism. I knew it was going on, and I just remember it was important that she'd go to Washington, D.C. So I was in middle school, and let me get back on track. I was in middle school. I knew what she was doing was important because she was going to Washington, D.C. So that was where some of my early feelings of what a person needs to do for the world came in, which of course changed over time. It was something she could do, and I was proud of her for that. And my dad was proud of her for that. And I have a brother and a sister, so he would just take over the whole family. And so, so Mom, the next slide, please. That's where I'm getting confused. The next slide. So when Mom feels there's a really different view of activism then that she felt than part of what we're feeling now, part of that is the more that I think is affected by women, the push for women to be more independent, for women just to also be working full time, not all women, but in general. So of course that would change how there could be 500 women in the San Mateo AAUW. And then Mom's going to talk a little bit about the change that she's seen over the years.
Probably a lot of you. I have to say, we knew it was important to be a part of the world, and we knew it was important to be mindful now that mindfulness is such a generally used jargon, I would say. That phrase wasn't even around, but there wasn't this element of inner awareness. We just knew it was important to be a part of the world, to be interested in the world, but the elements of mindfulness that make you really think about what's going on inside you. We may have been thinking about it unconsciously, but I will tell you, we were not thinking about it consciously. Being active was just because issues needed to be fought, things need to be done.
So what's important now is for all of us to be comfortable with what we're doing. More individual to add, because that's the world we live in. It's not right or wrong, it's just a different world that we're living in. So next slide. And one of the people that I follow not so closely anymore, but Leslie Korn is real involved in integrative medicine. And I just like this chart of all the things that we have in our life that are important for balance. You know, everyone, like, I'm not so into culinary medicine, but, you know, it's so important that we don't get so focused on something that it's just making us uncomfortable, so uncomfortable. We need all these other things for balance. Just a reminder slide. And then the next slide, so over the years, the field of psychology, as Mom was describing, has gone from an outer to somewhat an inner. And I would say from a kind of talk therapy to what's happening inside your body, specifically inside your nervous system. So a lot of the schools, if some of you have children or grandchildren in schools, they may be talking to you about these zones, the green zone, the yellow zone, the red zone. So what happens in the green zone is you want to be socially engaged. Your digestion is good. You're able to rest and recuperate. You're able to hear something and, you know, take it in without getting really unsettled. You feel more grounded. You feel kind and compassionate and curious and open. And then when you may hear something or see something, maybe on the news, maybe we're at the coast. I don't think everyone's at the coast, but something happening to the world, to nature you don't feel is right. That can get us in, or something with your family, somebody in your family, there's worry or fear, worry and concern. It kind of, our blood pressure goes up, our heart rate goes up, our adrenaline, so your pupil size, your metabolism changes, you may want to eat or not eat, and your digestion is off. So that makes it harder to stay in that kind, compassionate place. And then if it keeps going, you kind of disconnect, you might become numb, you just shut down, you may go in your bed and put the covers over your head, and that's the best you can do that day. So what's really important, so what the theory is now is that you're noticing when your body's becoming uncomfortable before your mind. Once you're up in that red zone, it's really hard to make kind, compassionate decisions, kind, compassionate yourself or other people. And just a side note, I'm starting to see more in the news. One of the big questions when I start getting discomfort is like an outrage in like, how can people follow these things that just don't make sense? And that's where I have to, I'm thinking part of what's happening is they're so uncomfortable with it, they can't even stay in that yellow zone to say, this doesn't really make sense. This doesn't really feel comfortable. So I'm thinking part of what's happening, people are just defending what they've kept being saying rather than thinking this is just making less and less sense. So that's just a side note on one way that I'm acknowledging that feeling. So often I don't turn on the news unless it's Stephen Colbert. So that's just one way that I'm helping myself be more comfortable with the discomfort right now. So this whole polyvagal theory and what's happening inside us to help us keep calm, anyone who's taking a walk, anyone who's just going outside and looking at flowers, you're affecting your nervous system and helping your nervous system calm down. Those things really matter. Even just, if you can't go out of your house, even just thinking of a time when you really had a good time with something and just kind of going through it in your mind, those things are all really important to help us be able to stay socially engaged. And then when we think about activism, I think of Gloria Steinem and Hillary and Michelle, they must really get, really angry sometimes, but they are able to keep going. And they're kind of my role models for that, like my mom is. I think about all the work she did, and then sometimes something will come back in the news, like the ERA's coming back up, and to be able to stay and say, wow, we worked hard on that. And I feel proud about that. So just that change from trying to resolve things in your head, because your mind does try to resolve things in your head, but so many things are going on right now that are bigger than our head can resolve. So to go back to your body and smell the flowers is so important to not get really uncomfortable. So the next slide. We'll get time. Oh, good. So the next slide is actually an activity. So if everyone can sit really comfortably. Maybe take a drink of water. Dog. So Tara Brach she is quite a lady and quite a prolific writer that's bringing a lot of the Eastern tradition into the Western thinking. So that's kind of this mind-body connection. And so think of a time when you just felt really agitated or uncomfortable. where you just, I mean, it could be something social justice related. It could be something really sad. And just kind of be aware of your feelings. And if you want to, you can write it in the chat. You know, if you want to, you know, is there an anger? Is there a sadness, a fear? Just kind of sit in that for a moment. One of the things we try to do is distract ourselves from negative feelings. But just right now, for the next 15 minutes, just really sit in those negative feelings. Because our feelings can't kill us. They can be really uncomfortable. So do you feel agitated? Kind of just like go back in your mind. What were you hearing? What were you seeing? What was going on? What happened before those feelings came up? I mean, I describe my outrage sometimes when I'm watching the news. So do you feel annoyed? Do you feel distraught? Disgusted? Confused? A lot of times I'd feel confused. So if anyone's coming up with something and you can write it in the chat, that would be great, just to share it. Do you feel aggressive? Do you feel kind of checked out? Do you feel like I've had enough? Do you feel heavy or light? Anxious, overwhelmed. Good. So recognizing the R means consciously acknowledging in any given moment the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are affecting us, like awakening from a dream. The first step out of what Tara Brach calls a trance of unworthiness is simply to recognize that we are stuck and subject to painfully constricting beliefs, emotions, and physical sensations. Common signs include a critical inner voice, feelings of shame or fear, the squeeze of anxiety, the weight of depression in the body, and that recognizing this can be a simple mental whisper, noticing it came up. And so sometimes we start blaming ourselves and saying, you know, we're just not good enough, nobody likes us. Oh, I feel like fighting when watching the news. Yeah. Helplessness. Yeah. Grief. Disgusted, hopeless. And so what Tara is suggesting is just recognize these feelings. Don't be analyzing them yet. Just allow them. Then the A is just allow these feelings, just as it is. You know, being a human, we have so many joys, but we also have these challenges. And just accept them. Don't try to fight them. Don't try to deny them. Allowing means letting the thoughts and emotions and feelings or sensations we have recognized simply be there without trying to fix or avoid them. When we're caught in a self-judgment, letting it be there means it doesn't mean we don't agree. It doesn't mean we agree or that we're not worthy. They're just there. Just acknowledge that you're having these negative feelings. And that's where when Gloria Steinem, you know, she said, women can't be angry. Well, yes, they can, and they are, and they need to be. But there was just a feeling that it was unfeminine at that time. And I can just imagine how hard that was for women. And it still happens to our teenagers, which also brings up feelings for me too, and our adults. But so just kind of allow these, just as a group. We're all here. We're all here sitting in these negative feelings. Just for a moment, we're going to pass through them instead of avoid them. Because what happens is if you keep trying to avoid them, they'll just keep popping up. If you recognize that you move through them, like the waves in the ocean, that when they pop up, they're not as painful, and it's easier to stay in that yellow zone where you can make good decisions. So just let it be for a moment. Collapsed, frozen, yeah. Just family affects us so much more, can affect us so much more, because our families are tribe. Our families are tribe, yeah. And we need our tribe. And so when things are happening with your family, just can be so feeling of overwhelming and hopeless and helpless. Yeah. So then let's move on to the I now that you're very uncomfortable, or maybe you might feel the grip of fear, and then mentally whisper yes, or it's okay, it's okay. And this is a reason I'm just noting this too, is some of the reasons some people come to therapy is in the therapy room. It gives them permission to feel these feelings in a safe place, because sometimes we don't want to feel them, especially if we've experienced trauma, because we don't know where it will end. So if anyone wants to talk to me about that, feel free to give me a call. So now the next step to help us move through this and help us be able to regulate and make good decisions is to investigate the feelings. She calls it investigate with care and interest. And often I say the word be curious. Instead of being angry or questioning why somebody's doing something, why the world's doing what it's doing, just be curious. So once we've recognized and allowed what is arising, we can deepen our attention through investigation. To investigate, call on your natural curiosity, the desire to know the truth, and direct a more focused attention to your present experience. You might ask yourself, what wants more attention? How am I experiencing this in my body? What am I believing? What does this vulnerable place want from me? What does it need? Whatever the inquiry, your investigation will be most transformational if you step away from conceptualizing and bring your primary attention to the felt sense in the body. So just for a moment, you kind of float to your body. You know, what's happening in your head? What's happening in your throat? Does your throat feel a little tight? Does your stomach feel a little nauseous? Does your back feel hurt? Do your legs feel tense, or your arms? Some people get sweaty in their appendages. You know, or how are your shoulders? Kind of, you know, what's happening with your breathing? Is your breathing going faster? You know, what's happening is your heart. Is your heart like hurting? Is it heavy? You know, what's happening in your chest? Is it hard to breathe? You know, what's happening in your face? Just what's happening in your whole body. Just focus on your body, because that's where we can start moving past these emotions. That's where we can resolve and begin nurturing ourselves. So I suggested take a drink of water earlier. You know, just notice the water going down your throat to get you out of that discomfort with the feelings that we're recognizing and aware of and investigating. Good job. I see somebody take a little drink there. Self-care is so important to get past these feelings. Absolutely. So nurture with self-compassion, and we nurture ourselves in so many ways, and we need to still do that, even though, you know, there are such distressing things that want to take our attention. If we don't nurture ourselves in some ways, despite the challenges, we're just going to get stuck in the distress and not be helpful to ourselves or anybody else. So self-compassion begins to naturally arise in the moments that we recognize that we're suffering. That's just what our body wants to do. Our body wants to take care of itself when we're noticing the suffering in our body. So it comes into fullness and intentionality. We nurture our inner life and self-care. To do this, try to sense what the wounded, frightened, and hurting place inside you most needs, and then offer some gesture of active care that might address this need. And that's where I see, especially in our AAUW here, the women here are so good at that, and I'm imagining it's all over. I mean, they got this book group and this lunch group and this walking group. They are so careful about nurturing themselves and each other. It's just so important that we have that social connection, and that they take walks through beautiful gardens. I mean, that's so important, and we need to not minimize it with all that's going on right now. We need to do it socially distanced, of course, but physically distanced. So I mean, So now come back and just think about how do you nurture yourself? Think of a place where you feel really, really just a calm mind. And maybe it was 15 years ago. You know, it doesn't need to be today. Your body doesn't know if it was the past or the present. Just kind of let your mind go there. You know, you're acknowledging the junk, the ick, but also letting your body know, I care. And somebody brought up the rebellion to activism, which is exactly, I would define it, that's an excellent point. The rebellion to activism, I would say it's because your body's having a hard time to tolerate it. So that self-care is even more important, to recognize that activism is about change. And our body is sensitive to change because we want things to be patterns. We want them to be the same. So it is like a rebellion. Your body, it does naturally rebel to an activism or a change. So that's a really good point to make. And that's why the political part of AAUW, which is its social function and then also the political activism function, I think, I'm wondering if and I tried to find it and I couldn't find it, when the people first came up with the concept of AAUW, did they recognize that in order to stay present in the activism, do you also need that social grounding piece? So that's an excellent piece. That's an excellent connection somebody's making. I don't know if I addressed that. I'm just wondering, now people are sitting in their comfortable place, what kind of feelings are coming up for you? Maybe just think, what's the opposite of what you said? Is there some inspiration, a calm? Good. Yeah, we need to have energy for activism. Yeah. You know, maybe a gratitude for the AAUW members of the past and that you're part of that team, that you can be part of it. Maybe a sense of joy, you know, appreciation for what you built. We absolutely don't need to be perfect. I think that's, yeah. And that's where, I think that's where it comes up for me. I don't need to do exactly what my mother did and to be an activist, because I work full time and that's really a different kind of, I felt some sadness that I couldn't agree to be secretary of AAUW when I was asked, but you know, it would be really hard for me to do that right now. Maybe someday, but at the time I was beginning my private practice. I appreciated being asked so I could stay in that appreciation rather than go into that feeling of shame that I wasn't doing what somebody else was asking me to do, which I absolutely didn't need to do, and I realized that. I was adding to my angst. There's an example of adding to our angst. You know, do you have a feeling of confidence? You know, I'm part of this team. Helpfulness, good, an opposite, yeah. A need for focus, yeah. And that need for focus, we need to be in that green, yellow zone to be able to not have our mind be hijacked. Do you feel engaged? Do you feel part of things? What else are people feeling? And what's happening in your body? Is there more of a lightness? A more of part of the team? And that's where the Zoom comes in. If we were all sitting in a room, it would be really different doing this, but you know, we can do Zoom. That's great. It's a tool. Somebody invented it. So kind of just sit in that appreciation of yourself, self-care kind of place. Just if you want to start saying what you do for self-care. My mom and I walked on the beach this morning. On most mornings, you do walk on the beach. What do other people do to help recharge? Keep them in the green zone. Breathing has slowed and deepened. Yeah, absolutely. Nap. Yeah. Hike in nature. Beautiful. Beautiful state we live in. Gardening. Oh, grounding. Gardening. So grounding. Playing in the dirt. Reading a good book. Yeah. Whether it's a learning book or a fantasy dreaming book. Yeah. Mow my lawn. Yeah. I love that smell of mowing the lawn. Yeah, when you feel calm, you can feel confident. Sit in the garden, love to cook. Oh, cooking. Sharing food with people, it's a real way to connect. Or it was, still is. Time with the grandkids. Oh, kids are wonderful. I do a lot of play therapy. I say I do it because so I can have all the good toys. So I'm just wondering, do people see where they can, when they're starting to feel that angst, that tightness in their body or sadness and grief, where they could go through these steps, recognizing, just kind of talking about what's going on and investigating and then nurturing themselves? Getting a dog. Oh, dogs are wonderful. Yoga, meditation, time with the grandkids. Do people see where they might be able to use this? People are saying that they're feeling a little different. And the reason, Tara, this is a pretty, some people do this more naturally without the rain, but Tara says right now we need the acronym to help remind us to go from step to step. So often we're so into that red zone, it's so hard to do that. We recognize, but it's so hard to do the awareness without just distracting. And then we come back to it sometimes. Anybody have any comments about what they just experienced? Oh, cats are good too. Any animals? Question? Well, if you want to go to the next slide. So, yeah, the whole texting phone thing, it's so hard when you're trying to connect with somebody and they're telling you, I'm listening. And their answers off the timing of the regular conversation. Turning off the news, so important. Yeah, that's my cousin too. Okay, so another activity that we're not going to do is more about the nervous system. So it's similar, but it's focused on the nervous system. And Deb Dana just came out with a new book. I put it in the references of the handouts that you'll get. So its basic is the acronym: befriend the feelings, attend to them, shape them, integrate them, and connect with other people. So, and why do we do this? Some of you experience this, that you just become more comfortable with awareness of the discomfort, and then you can move on to be doing activism or whatever you need to do without being stuck. You only talk to your positive friends. Yeah, it's really to be aware of people that are healthy for you to be around, and to if you need to be around somebody that's difficult for you to be around, to kind of schedule something afterward to help you, even if it's just going through the rain, to acknowledge your feelings. I was involved in a conversation last night. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I had to go through rain on the way home, and then once again when I got home. So the next slide.
Can I ask a question, Julia? Can you, you said you went through the rain process. Can you explain how within your daily life then you might utilize this process? Just explain a little bit more. You have to actually pay attention and notice that you're feeling the feelings, right? Yeah,
and to name them. And that's why I put, there's several long lists of feelings. And it's much easier when you're looking at a list. So if somebody was in my office, I would most likely hand them a list to look at. it helps to acknowledge them when you're looking at that list. So I can give you my example that I was referring to, and I do go through it several times a day. As a therapist, sometimes somebody will tell me a story and I need to stay present for that other person. So I will quickly go through and, can you go back to the rain slide? I'll quickly recognize what's coming up for me and accept it. And part of my acceptance when I'm working with somebody else, or, you know, when you're out in public in a different situation, maybe to say, self, I'm going to come back to this later, because right now I need to be present for somebody else. And then just investigate why it affected me, whatever the person was saying, and then nurture myself. Therapists do a lot of talking to other therapists, not about people, but about their response to people. And that's really important as a therapist. So what happened last night, we've probably all been in this situation, is I went to a business. Not only do I frequent it, but, you know, I've built a friendship with these people, and somebody, not the main business people, but somebody close to the business was in the business. And here I'm telling them that today, which is today, I'm going to pick up my friend's dog because my friend has COVID. And they're asking me why I'm not opening up my practice to see people in person, and telling me things their eye doctor did, great, and that the deaths aren't really COVID related. And I mean, I was just like, I kind of stopped because I started like, not arguing, but like trying to say a fact. I was really recognizing, like, I don't even know. I'd have to look at a feelings chart. It just got so wound up. I guess I was confused at first, and then I was like outraged that these people that are smart people, you know, would even like go there and then keep asking me why I'm not opening my practice. So I had to go to an acceptance place. Okay, they can do what they're doing, and that's where I kind of go to, okay, they're just saying the same thing over and over. They're just saying, they're like all on the same team, like they've had this conversation before, you know, COVID's not real, you know, all this stuff. I don't need to say it. And then so I stayed present with them, but then when I got in my car, I'm like doing my investigating, and I think that's where I'm coming up with, you know, what may have happened in their lives, that this is the way they're coping with this, and maybe putting some compassion on them, that I don't know. And then nurturing myself. I knew I was going to have a nice social time, carefully. It was dinner time. It's Friday night, it's Shabbat, I'm Jewish. I was like so glad. And I knew that was a nurturing time for me, and to be able to go enjoy that. So I went through that myself, and then got home and started all over again with my mom. So, so went through it, and then my cousin Leslie, who's actually on this chat, got to hear the story too. And then I was done, you know, and I could welcome the Shabbat. So that's the way I use it in my work, and that's a way I can imagine. I mean, I know teachers use it too, because they need to be present for their students. I think in every job, you're paid to be present for somebody else. So just to acknowledge it, not just because if you keep not acknowledging it, it just gets bigger and bigger, and till it just, you freeze. You can't, it's hard to move on.
Well, I just want to thank you for the example that you shared, because I know that that's probably an example that many of us are having to deal with. And so thank you for sharing your process of going through rain as you're interacting with folks like that. Yeah, we got some thumbs up here. So, yeah.
Does anyone else want to share theirs? We have a few more minutes where they could use it or have used it. And you may have used it, but not, with this acronym. This kind of helps step you through it when you're more dysregulated.
Okay, Karen King, you have your hand up. What did you want to say, hon? Oh, you're still muted. I can't unmute you. You have to do it.
I don't know why I have my hand up. I just figured out how to use the chat, so I'm getting.
Good job! Yay! Thank you.
Tai Chi is that Eastern tradition, body mind connection. Very good activity. Yeah, body and soul. So if you want to go to the last slide, unless somebody else wants to share.
The very last slide?
No, the next slide. Sorry.
Oh, the next slide. That was Deb. Do you want the next one?
Yeah, one more. The conclusion. So just to review, Mom will talk about the first one.
Oh. Temporarily, then I'll have to use rain to get out of it. Really bothered by the American stress on individualism and independence and how it's showing up now in things like, I don't need to wear a mask, that kind of thing, that it's suddenly taken on an extreme that may not be so positive as we used to think of individualism and independence as important. That has gone beyond that.
Really, so sometimes when I go to the beach, my mind can be racing on something, but then how I refocus would be just to think of my five senses. What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I tasting? What am I touching? And just to get my mind back to my body so my body can appreciate what am I feeling so I can calm down. I don't, because it's usually something I can't resolve in my mind. And then just, really glad to be part of AAUW. Both my mother and I were for social connection and a foundation for social action. The resources on the web are awesome. Just knowing I'm part of that team. Mom, what was the social connection? There was a lot of social connection. She didn't talk a lot about it, but there was social connection. Yeah, she did talk about it beyond just, it gave you somebody to talk to. Other than your children. Okay, I'm really interested in people's thoughts, questions, concerns. If you want to go to the next slide. Oh, so we'll go through these. So these are the needs people have, and I really like this. So if you just can't figure out what it is that's going on, you might want to look at this needs list. What is it I need? And then the next one is feelings when you're satisfied, which are great to just look at this. When was I feeling compassionate? Just kind of to refocus your mind. Chocolate's also good. And then the next one, which I look at this. Look at the words we have for feelings when we're not satisfied. There's like twice as many on just this list than the ones when we are satisfied. And I think that says something. I'm not sure what, but I think it says something. And then the next slide. Oh, and these are physical sensations. So sometimes it's hard to describe because we just don't do that a lot. So, are you feeling dizzy? Are you feeling fluttery? Are you feeling nauseous, queasy, congested, or energized? Sometimes I get overstimulated and I need to calm myself down. Itchy, energized, just like I'm floating. Often if you're talking to teenagers, they'll feel they're so dysregulated. They'll say like they're floating above and just watching their life. They can't, that's what happens. Or open-hearted, what can I do for someone else to help myself calm down? And then the next slide, some references. These lists are there. Michelle Obama's link to her talk about where she said she had low-grade depression. Deb Dana's new book, Polyvagal Exercises for Safety and Connection, and then Tara Brock's new book, Radical Compassion. I just want to put out there, if anyone's interested in doing an online book group with either of these two books or possibly another book, please let me know. It's very hard to get a group together in Seaside, and now that we have this tool, I would be glad to coordinate that if people are interested. And then the next slide is my contact information. So, thoughts, comments?
Well, I just want to throw out that I have been doing a free online 40-day mindfulness with Tara Brock and I think it's Jack Kornfield.
Wow.
And it's free. And every day you get about a 10-minute little discussion and then utilizing the strat, whatever they taught that day. And I'm on my second round through the 40 days because, of course, I didn't remember anything. And I'm going to put that link when we get the video out, or even probably in tomorrow's email. I'll put the link so anybody that wants access to the free mindfulness 10 minutes a day sort of thing, you can access that. It's been really wonderful for me. I use it as my beginning to my meditation time, and it's just really been helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. Jack Kornfield and Tara Brock are amazing.
Yes, yes. Anyone else have a comment, a question? Marty Stevens, this is a lot to digest. It has broadened my thinking about taking care of myself. Good on you, Marty. Yay, and Lee's clapping hands, great. I'm going to take you off of the main speaker or the main spotlight, and I'm going to stop the slideshow so you can actually see people. There we are. Yeah, we can all see each other. Maybe. So we can.
I just want to thank both of you for your fascinating presentation and also for the perspective that has covered so much time and so many events and given us a lot to think about. So really appreciate that. Thank you both.
And Barbara, they say to people in the military, thank you for your service. And I want to say that to you. Thank you for your service to AAUW and to women.
Thank you. It has been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
So we all want to come back at 1 o'clock today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We are so busy nurturing others, it's good to get permission to self-nurture. Yes.
Yes.
Important to recharge.
Right.
Yeah.
The airlines have it right. You have to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help somebody else.
And it's okay.
That's right.
Give ourselves permission.
Big breath.
Yeah. Just notice.
Well, I'm going to leave, but I don't want to leave without thanking our wonderful camp staff.
Oh, yes.
Yes. They are
hard work.
Just fabulous.
Nancy is the best. None of this could happen without her.
Well, I realized when I was complaining about all the work I was doing that this was my idea. So I can't complain too much. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a most gratifying morning, and I really appreciate Julia and Barbara for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll see you all in 2 hours.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks again, Julia and Barbara.